Hello again, and welcome back to another episode of the Noble Father podcast. I am your host, Theophilus, and today is September the 22nd of 2025. And man, uh, this Charlie Kirk thing has certainly been a one in which, when I said last episode, there's a shift coming. And, yesterday I really got a sense of that, watching the memorial ceremony for Charlie Kirk and all the speakers that came up and talked about his life and his legacy. And there comes a point where I've been fascinated, I guess you could say, fascinated by his life and the way that he was living for a 31-year-old who's, I got 8 years on him, and yet he is, God obviously anointed his life and anointed his voice to go out and speak to the masses. By no means is any of this like comparison or even saying that I am like him or what have you. We can look up to anybody, really, all right? If we come at it from a selfless perspective, right, we can look at anybody and say, wow, I can take something from this person and I can learn from them, right? At the age of 31, I think I was already a father. So 2 years ago, hey, you know what? I should really give myself credit. I think that at the age of 31, it's still relatively late, right? Compared to our parents and our grandparents before us. And, when I think about why aren't there more fathers in the world, and why is society pushing us to the brink? When I say us, to men pushing us to the brink, why is the attack on young men and men in general so prevalent? You've heard me talk about this in the past with, imprisonment of men. Crimes are predominantly 90%, I believe, is like men. Why is pornography always targeted towards men? Just everything seems to be targeted towards men, right? Family courts are all in favor of the women. Feminism and sexism and all this stuff is all to oppress men. I mean, it oppresses women as well, but it oppresses men even more. And like it's glaring, right? It's very glaring. And if you don't have the eyes to see, man, like really get out of your algorithm, get out of your little bubble and go and find the information that you need, because it's very important to realize how scary it is towards men, the attack towards men. So, in yesterday's memorial, I just couldn't get the word or the concept of a selfless man out of my head. When I hear about his life, he was out traveling 320 days out of the year, right? Which means he only had 40-ish days out of the year at home. When I picture what it means to be a present father, obviously he, and I can't say this because I don't know, right? Maybe he was traveling with them, see them every day. But if he's on the road 320 days out of the year, like, you can imagine what kind of life you're leading. Are you really present? And are you really able to be intentional? I'm willing to bet that he was very intentional. And there's plenty of footage of him traveling with his family. They go to his events. His kids are obviously younger, right? I believe they're like 3 and 1. And so, in the younger years, of course, but, there's going to come a time where they need stability. So anyways, the concept of selfless man has been in my head, replaying itself over and over. And I keep asking, obviously Jesus is the model of what it means to be a selfless man. That he'd come, that Jesus would send his son, Jesus, to come and die for our sins, as atonement for our sins, is probably about as selfless as an act as one can do in their life. But I can't help but look at our lives as men and think, like, Lord, what did you have intended for us as men? Like, what do you want our lives to be about? And the same could be true about the selfless giving, about a woman's life. is that there is a selfless aspect to it, and we all are called to be selfless in some way or another. So, I wanted to start by defining what it means to be a selfless man, and I want you to know that there was a temptation in me to go onto ChatGPT and type all this in and then let it come up with something and then, regurgitate it back to you guys. I didn't do that. I opened the tab, typed chat, and I was like, no, I cannot make this podcast about that. I need to be free thinking. I need to be critically thinking. I need to also be listening to the Holy Spirit and how it's guiding me and speaking about this. So this is going to be really off the cuff, right? If you know anything about my podcast, is I really don't enjoy scripted, planned out conversations, but also there's so much notes and so many things that I always want to say and I don't get it out. And so I'm going to try my best to go through what I came up with in my own mind and what was given to me by God as I, pray about what he wants me to talk about today. And this is all coming from my own thought. There's contribution obviously from the Bible, the Word of God, which is what I draw from what I saw in the memorial, what I saw in other people's lives, how I like to live my life, the Father and the standard that I hold myself to. By no means am I saying I'm doing it perfectly. And so when I give you this list of things, it's all things that I am always constantly working on, and always being careful to, take out the log in my eye before I say that about other people. These are all things that I am holding myself to, try to hold my community of noble fathers into as well in their own life. Some of them don't have the spiritual aspect in their lives. Some of them believe in Norse pagan or whatever else beliefs, or maybe they don't believe in anything, and yet we still hold themselves. They still hold themselves to that standard, and I try to hold them to it because it's undeniable, right? It's undeniable the implications of what a selfless father is compared to a selfish father. So a selfless man is someone, as I defined it, as someone who has done the hard work of looking himself in the mirror, sharpened himself first, and now works tirelessly to give of himself away to others who need it. And when I say the hard work of looking himself in the mirror, I also include things like their trauma and the hurts that they endured as a child, or through the system or through the society, through friends. Every person has some kind of trauma, some kind of generational, we'll just say curse, right? That's been passed down through the years. Mine in particular was I wanted my dad to be more present. I didn't get enough of him. I didn't get a lot of experiences that I would have wanted with him. And that can be a subjective thing, right? But I think any child would always want the most from their dad. They want more from them. And if I say that I'm feeling lacking in that domain, it's not wrong to say that. I'm not saying that my dad was a terrible father. I value who he was and how he contributed to who I am today, given what he went through himself and the generational curses and the trauma that he dealt with growing up. I am very blessed. And so, here are other things that kind of, when I think about topics for this podcast, this is where I draw my inspiration. Yesterday from the memorial, seeing the talk, right? They were talking about young men and how we need to be better partners to our wives. We need to serve them. We need to raise a family, right? They talked about the American dream, which was, providing for the family on one income, to be able to buy a house on one income, to raise the next generation, to speak boldly about what we believe in. And I just think in my head of like, man, selfless man, just kept coming up. So, aside from the, Charlie Kirk Memorial, the other day I took the kids to the park, and, I noticed that there was this child who was just in very not healthy shape. Got rolls coming off of his arms and rolls coming out of his legs, and just couldn't even really run, let alone walk. And, and I got in my head, I was like, man, like this has to be some form of like child abuse and usually when I have these thoughts, I go to the community and I post these things in, and I kind of let out my thoughts there because, I don't enjoy feeling that way. I don't enjoy feeling like holding those. It's quite judgy, I guess people would say. Wow, Theo, that's very judgmental of you. But there is a certain form of neglect, right? And that got me thinking of like, and obviously the kid's not there by himself. I saw the two parents and I looked and I was just like, of course, right? If it was two fit parents watching this obese kid, then that's clearly child abuse. When I looked at at his parents, it was quite obvious to me, like the average, right? This kid was the average. If anything, it was worse. The parents were not as obese as this kid was, but it was quite evident that they're not taking care of themselves physically, and who knows however else. Are they present? Absolutely. But you can't tell me that you care for the well-being of your child if your kid's struggling to run, let alone walk. I can't even understand the perpetuation of that, right? Of what that is and what that looks like. And is that the selfless man? Is that the selfless example we should be living? I don't think so, right? Some might call that abuse. Some might call that neglect. I just can't stand just seeing the sight of it. It's just I'm just so averse to it. I don't enjoy seeing that. And so, as I'm thinking about, what does it mean to contribute on a selfless level? And I want to, talk about the selfish as well. In fact, I'll talk about the selfish first, because it's important to understand our enemy, to understand why we are perpetuated to live this way in our lives, and how it actually plays into everything that's going on with the Charlie Kirk stuff, right? And people are saying, pick sides and stuff, but really there is a side. It's either you're good or you're evil, right? Either you're selfless or you're selfish, right? You can't have both. You have to pick a side, right? It's Rufio Peter Pan, I always say, right? It's Batman or Joker. You have to choose a side. And so, here are some methods of selfless opposition that, as I'm thinking about what it means to be selfless and selfish, right? Here's what I think are selfish, like methods of selfish opposition, right? You're unwilling to unpack trauma and hurts, right? And you're pushing those who want to help at a distance. Now, this is a good example of like, we want to escape reality, right? That's why video games are so prevalent. That's why things like gender dysmorphia is so prevalent, right? It's escaping of a reality. It's like a video game character. Oh, I don't like this character anymore. I'm just going to create a new one, right? Create a new identity, one that fits better, one that's more comfortable, one that's more cozy, and adopt it because, this reality is terrible, right? I don't know if you ever watched the movie Avatar, right? The blue aliens on the planet, and the guy arrives and he's, in a handicap wheelchair, and eventually he, goes into this body where he gets his leg back. I remember when I watched that movie and I left the theater, I felt like there was just like a little bit of a depression in me of like, man, I wish I could live that way. I wish I could live this alternate life. And there's, that's why probably like cosplay and all these other anime things, you want to live this life that is not your own, because the reality of the things that you're going through are so stark, right? And case in point, right? I know so many friends who come from broken families, and when I look at their children, the dad's not present, right? Because mom and dad were probably fighting or bickering, or the partner has passed away. You see so much hurt in that, and my heart breaks for them, right? Because it's a crappy situation to find themselves in, but there's this like dissonance, there's this like separation where they don't want to touch that trauma, and they have no means of getting through it, or there are means, but they don't face it. They don't go and attack it, right? And then it just perpetuates and it grows and it festers, and then it turns into, bad fruit in their lives. You see that everywhere, right? People who are not dealing with their stuff end up bleeding over everybody else, and then they get involved in relationships and they get involved with other people who are just as broken, and like, two rotten fruits coming together isn't going to create a healthy fruit. Like it just goes against the laws of this world. It'll go against the laws of this universe. They and because they don't unpack that hurt and the trauma within themselves, they end up devaluing and they discredit themselves. They discredit their gifts, and then they discredit their potential. So that there's really, like, what is there to share at that point? You're just an empty shell of a person who's got broken hurts, right? And then you don't contribute in any kind of meaningful way to other people because you don't care about yourself. So why care about other people, right? It's mathematical. this, and then ultimately this produces kind of like a get mine attitude, right? Which injects kind of selfishness into all relationships. Like, I'm just taking from people, right? What can I get from this person? And that's just not any way to carry on kind of relationships, right? And then in turn, it prioritizes self-indulgence. It prioritizes convenience and comfort over the perpetuation of the future. And what I mean by this is like comfort. Like, I don't want to have kids because I want to travel more. I want to have kids because I want to have a better financial plan. I want to retire early, all this stuff. And it's like me, and like there's no selfless. There's no opportunities to grow and experience what it means to be selfless and to give of yourself to other people, right? And then you have a prevailing attitude of consumption with little to no contribution, right? You're just taking in information, and your algorithm starts feeding you things that could only feed your selfishness, right? It's not going to give you anything about selflessness. It's not going to give you anything about personal development because you're not even at that stage yet. You haven't even healed. So what's growth to you? Meaningless, right? There's no reason to go into that, right? Until shit hits the fan, something happens, and then bam, like, oh man, like knocked me out of this, maybe it's something jarring. And we're seeing this in people who have been impacted by Charlie Kirk's death. They're like, wow, evil is real. And then suddenly, boom, snap out of it, go to church for the first time, open the Bible for the first time, pray to God for the first time. I'm not saying miracles don't happen, and they do, but it takes something so stark, so uprooting for them to realize, oh wow, this is not the results I want to find myself in, right? And this is going to sound really judgy, but then they start to stand for what's subjective, because objective truth challenges their immaturity and their selfishness, right? This is real to me. This is true. This is my reality, right? And this is why right now we're dealing with all the transgender ideology stuff and other ideology things of like, oh, it's hateful to kick out illegal immigrants because they want to find a better living here as well. These are not contributing members of society, and yet no, because that's hate and we shouldn't do that. Or now to the point where we're supporting terrorism in other countries. It's just like unbelievable, where we're not getting facts from places where we are from the ground. We're getting facts from people who are just feeding us this information, right? So then you stand on subjective truth because that's easier for me to say, because then I can just get away with my own BS. There's people that are willing to co-sign my BS, right? But I won't stand on, because if I stand on objective truth, then that balancing power it's very obvious at that point, right? What's right? Oh, wait. Oh yeah, that's wrong, right? This is wrong. We can't be leaning like this. Nobody enjoys. A selfish person would not enjoy objective truth because it'll go against everything they believe and stand for, right? Well, I can bend the truth a little bit to fit my narrative. Well, subjective truth is what I believe in, right? And at that point, well, then you just surround yourself with people who are surface level, right? And who also prioritize comfort and convenience in their own life, right? Because you're not going to go find deep level people, right? A person who doesn't enjoy working on themselves or dealing with the trauma is not going to hang out with therapists, life coaches, not going to hang out with counselors, not going to hang out with people who are into personal development, growing themselves, working out, doing the hard thing, denying themselves, extreme ownership, people who adopt extreme ownership in their own life, who have dealt with the trauma, who want to deal with the trauma, who want to help other people deal with their trauma. They're not going to surround themselves with people like that, right? You're not going to go to a church if you believe in subjective truth, right? Or, I mean, there are churches out there that allow you to get away with subjective truth that don't preach the Bible, and that's another thing. But you'll find things to fit your narrative. You'll go find things to co-sign your bullshit. And that is exactly where we're at in the world, right? They hold themselves to no standard, because to do so would inflict cognitive dissonance, right? Why have a standard at that point? Okay, then why does it matter if we're killing babies in the womb? Why does it matter if I'm just going to chop off my genitals and call myself whatever name I want to call myself? There's no standard. There's no objective truth. So 2 + 2 isn't 4, and you're a racist, you're a bigot, and that's that, right? Which is crazy, because if subjective truth was real, then you can't even label somebody and for that to be unequivocally true. There's no truth, because your words are not right, and because there's no objective truth, you can't say anything. Doesn't matter if you say I'm a racist, because there's no standard. Just wouldn't matter. And then in turn, these people go to blame others, even when glaring evidence is present, right? And the Bible's very clear. There are people like that in those times where they would not see the signs and miracles. Pharaoh was a good example. I mean, Pharaoh's a different example because, God did harden his heart. But there's people in the Bible that just saw the evidence, saw who Jesus was, saw the signs that he performed, and yet still could not believe. And these people were, very much like their algorithms, these people in their lives, right? The Pharisees are telling, let's look at them. What do they think? Oh, they don't like this guy. Okay, so then let's just not come to our own conclusions and come up with and just follow what they say, right? This is literally everything I've just said. Selfish opposition. Everything I just said, how they treated Jesus is exactly the same way these Pharisees treated him. And the people around were just like, oh, let's follow these people, because I don't have a deep enough faith to understand or come to my own conclusions. I'm just going to follow the public, right? I'm just going to follow everybody else. So what is the opposite, right? Let's go to the opposition. What is the opposite, right? What is a method? What are methods of selfless contribution? And this is something I saw yesterday, right? In the memorial ceremony, seeing everybody talking and the vision that they had for America, right? I'm not saying it's a perfect reality, right? There's no way it'll ever be a perfect reality. That the only place that is heaven, right? Starts with, you heal the hurts that plague us all to help others with the same pain we know too well, right? If you've ever heard Donald Miller, he talks about like the difference between a villain and a protagonist, a hero and a villain. Hero sees the pain that he dealt with, and he helps others avoid that pain himself. The villain hurts other people the same way that he's been hurt. He lashes out against the world. And this is the difference here, right? Is that we need to heal those hurts, or else we end up bleeding over the people around us that we care about, right? Not doing that work is not loving our friends, not loving our family members who are around us, right? And when you're done healing, or because it's a never-ending journey, you're constantly healing, when in working on that to a point where one day you are quietly sharpening and honing yourself to a life of selfless giving, right? Because you're not healing that just for yourself. Like I just said, you're not healing that for yourself. You're healing yourself to serve other people. You're helping other people with a similar hurt, right? Noble Father is a great example. I dealt with not having a present father, or at least a present father that I wanted, right? And now all we talk about is presence and intentionality in being a father, right? Reminding fathers that, hey, you're important. You need to be there for your kids. You need to be noble for your kids. You need to stand on what's unwavering. You stand unwavering on the truth to help your kids, right? To grow your kids. That's everything that Noble Father is all about. I'm not grandstanding and saying that I'm doing such a wonderful job. I am just as imperfect, but we're all striving towards something better, right? And then once you've honed and sharpened those skills, right, you exercise those skills to live a life of purpose and fulfillment by serving those around you. You are giving it away. It's a gift to unwrap and unravel and to give away to somebody selflessly, right? To great purpose and fulfillment. I can speak to somebody that you can't. You can speak to somebody that I can't. Charlie spoke to people that I couldn't. I can speak to people that Charlie couldn't. We're all meant to give in a certain way to a certain demographic of people, right? We resonate with other people that some won't resonate with others, right? That's just the way that it is. We are all created unique for a reason, right? We're not just black and white and that's it, right? We're all special, we're all unique, and we're all called to give and serve in that manner. That's literally how God intended life to be, right? And so, as a selfless person, right, then we go to share in relationships with other people. For one, our wives, right? As men, our wives. Erica Kirk yesterday up on stage talking about her husband, right? Talking about how we as men need to selflessly give to our wives. We do not treat them as slaves. We do not treat them as, lesser partners, right? We are to come together as one. And so we need to serve our wives tirelessly, outdoing them in love in all aspects of life. This is not something that I do well, okay? It's not something that I'm great at, right? This is imperfection. I am trying, but I try my best. That is the biggest thing, is that we're trying our best. If you know what your best is, hold yourself to that account, right? You serve selflessly. Well, I just finished a day of work and food is not made yet. Well, my wife is also tired. She's also not feeling well. Okay, go and make food. Oh, you made food? Well, usually, and this is kind of like this unwritten rule, when you make food, the other person does the dishes. Well, sometimes you do the dishes as well. Well, sometimes you got to empty the dish rack, the dishwasher before you can do the dishes. Well, you did it all today. Oh, now you got to put the kids down as well. Well, it's okay, right? You outdo each other in love. And that's selflessness. That's selflessness. Doing it without an expectation of return, doing it without a thanks. It's part of life. It's part of being in this life. And then beyond that, not just tirelessly, selflessly having a partner and serving her, but also creating, raising, and nurturing the next generation to his utmost potential and also your children's utmost potential, right? Because there needs to be a perpetuation. There needs a passing down of the torch. There needs to be, how does this world thrive, is that we all have kids. And that's literally something that was spoke about on the ceremony yesterday, is that we need to have kids and have kids to the point where even when you can't afford them, somebody said yesterday, right? That's key, right? Why are people having kids so much later nowadays? It's just selfish, constant selfishness. Oh, I want to travel more. Oh, I want to buy this. I want to buy that. I want to live this life. I'm not done partying, blah, blah, blah. I have career goals and aspirations. Like, dude, like, I beat that dead horse all the time, man. Like, if you want to experience what it means to live life to its fullest, like, you need to be selfless. You need to be put in an opportunity, in a space and an opportunity, and put yourself in positions to experience what it means to be selfless. Because when you're holding that child, you realize how important your actions are, and you become what everything you do impacts this child. This helpless little child can't change its diapers itself, can't feed itself, can't everything, right? Depends on you, right? I mean, not everything depends on you. God takes care of you, nurtures you, but then you realize, wow, this is so important. Why am I doing this? What is this for? Its greatest joy is to be able to create a life. That's literally what God has given us. That's a huge responsibility, right? It's not for you to selfishly do things. And man, you see selfish parents out there, right, who only care for themselves, use these kids as weapons against the other partner, or whatever it is. Like, just unbelievable, right? If we only turn selfishness into selflessness, this world would change for the better, right? And then positively, this man positively impacts all the environments he's a part of, right? He's a salt and a light, right? And I speak about this like that because Charlie Kirk was a good example of that. Every environment he was in, he brought God, right? Trump was saying yesterday that right, your will be done, Lord, not mine, but your will be done, right? This was his prayer, ever, like, he kept using this prayer in everything that he did. And that's what we're called to be wherever we go, right? Bring a smile and raise people up, right? And to serve others, right? How can I pray for you? How can I help you through this situation? That's what we're called to do, is give selflessly to the environments that we're a part of, right? And then at that point, you have to stand on truth, right? You have to stand for truth and what's right, even when the resistance against you becomes life-threatening. And Charlie Kirk was another good example of that, right? Even Jesus, right, stood for what is right. Right? He didn't bend he didn't bend the narrative in any kind of way. Hey, it's sin. Stop sinning. This is not what you're called to do. This is not what your life is about. Stop sinning. Draw closer to God. And he was the living example of that, right? And it's going to be hard for us one day, because there is going to become a day where we are going to be challenged in our faith. Where are you going to stand? What are you standing on? If you're standing on wishy-washy, could be this, could be that, I can believe whatever I want to be, and just lies don't stand in the light of truth. Truth will always prevail. Truth is a rock that you build your house upon, and whenever it shakes and whenever the water comes, it's firm. It doesn't move. It's unshakable, right? What do you stand on? Are you going to have your kids stand on wishy-washy as well? You're going to have them stand on foundations that don't withstand the test of time, right? How do you think that trickles down the generations? How do you think the trauma is going to trickle down as a result of that kind of embodiment of subjective truth? It doesn't last. It's not setting up your children in any kind of meaningful way. It's spiritual obesity, right? You're setting up these children for deprivation in their life, right? That's just not selfless parenting. Um, right, and then you go to surround yourself with people who push beyond comfort and into growth, right? These people also stand on truth. They're also unwavering in what they believe. They hold themselves to a higher standard, which is the last point, which is holds himself to a higher standard than those around him, right? Case in point, like I told you, I am imperfect. I hold myself as much as I can to this. I talked about extreme ownership just now. Extreme ownership I hold on to every single day. This morning I got up and I was just so in malaise. I just didn't want to wake up. I didn't want to do anything with my day. Prayed to the Lord and I said, God, please take my day. I have no energy for this. Lord, please help me to adopt a mindset, the perspective that you have for me. And it was funny because as I'm doing the dishes in the morning, clearing the dish rack of all the dishes that are done, a thought entered my head of like, how is this your fault and responsibility? This is a question that I've always asked myself. Well, you went to sleep late. You were on your phone before you went to bed. Of course, that's going to affect the way that you sleep. And then when you don't fall asleep quick, well, then it's not when you wake up, it's when you go to sleep. And so in that moment, I was like, man, it's your fault. No wonder you're feeling this way. No wonder you're feeling grumpy. Is because you did not hold yourself to a higher standard. You did not go to sleep early. You let other things get in the way. And we'll just say you let other things become idols in your life. And you prioritize those things over yourself, over your growth. And now your family's paying the consequences, right? My wife woke up and came over and was like, are you okay? And I said, I'm just a little grumpy this morning. Well, how is that your fault and your responsibility? Ask yourself that. Why am I angry? Well, ask yourself, how is this my fault and my responsibility? Oh, this social media post really, really angered me. Why? How is this your fault and your responsibility? Charlie Kirk's murder. Wow, such a good thing that happened. Why is that? How is that your fault and your responsibility? Like, why are you celebrating a person's death? Ask yourself that question. How is this your fault and your responsibility? Right? Hold yourself to a higher standard, right? People are unwilling to do that because it's easier to take the easy way out. It's easier to not work out. It's easier to not do the mental jujitsu in your mind of like, why am I celebrating a person's death? Is this the kind of person that I want to live? This kind of life I want to live? And if I have kids, God forbid you have kids and now the kids see you celebrating a person's death. What does that open the door for? It's not anything good, right? What kind of kids are you going to create? Not anyone good, right? It's not what we're called to do. And so I want to close with, a few Bible verses that, speak about what it means to be a parent or be a father. Proverbs 4:1-9 says, Hear, O sons, a father's instruction, and be attentive, that you may gain insight. For I give you good precepts. Do not forsake my teaching. When I was a son with my father, tender, the only one in the sight of my mother, he taught me and said to me, Let your heart hold fast my words. Keep my commandments and live. Get wisdom, get insight. Do not forget, and do not turn away from the words of my mouth. Like, you want your kids to thrive? Discipline your children. Raise them up in the way that they should go. Show them how to live. If they become the average of the two parents, how are you raising your kids will greatly impact everything, their life included, right? Hebrews 12:7 says, It is for discipline that you have to endure. God is treating you as sons. For what son is there whom his father does not discipline, right? Neglect and abuse, right? A father that does not discipline or raise their children, raise their sons in the way they should go is neglectful, and it's borderline abuse. You're not preparing them for the road ahead. And that is literally what Hebrews 12:7 is saying. And the last verse I'll give is Ephesians 6:1-3. It says, Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise, that it may go well with you and that you may live long in the land. Now, many will say, well, what if my dad or my mom was an abusive person, or she was a narcissist, or he's a narcissist, and they were this, that? God still calls you to honor them, right? It's not to accept what it is that they're dealing with, right? But you are called to honor them, right? There are different ways to honor them in different contexts. And why is it a commandment with a promise, that it may go well with you and you may live long in the land? Like, why does God say that, right? Because if society does not thrive, and there's not if society is all consists of selfish parents, and selfish parents who only believe in subjective truth, what kind of land are you going to live in eventually? Think about it. I mean, maybe Canada is a good example of that right now. Poor leadership, right? People who keep voting in corrupt officials into power, and they expect things to change and whine and complain, right? They're not willing to own up to the fact that they caused this, or extreme ownership, this whole scenario, right? They don't get outside of their algorithm. They only listen to legacy media, right? And they don't do any growing of themselves. Then they just keep voting in the same stupid politicians that don't serve the people, and keep complaining. Like, it's just dissonance, right? It's just complete incongruence of life, right? Say one thing and take a different action, or don't take action, right? It's little thinking. It's small closed-mindedness, and it's just not what we're called to be. And so I want to leave that at that. I think that's enough for you to understand what it means to live selflessly. Like, really ask yourself, how is this your fault and your responsibility, right? And how are you contributing in life, right, to those around you in your own life? Are you living a selfless life, or are you living a selfish life, right? In all things, ask yourself, in everything, in my career, in my children, right? In my parenting, in my marriage, in my vocation, right? In my ministry. Ask yourself, are you selfless, or are you selfish, right? Very interesting question. I really want to show my appreciation for, those who listen and tune back in. Please help me. Please share this message with people, because, after what happened to Charlie Kirk, I realized that my voice has meaning, and like, God has really appointed me to speak out on these things as well. And like, I'd really appreciate the help in growing it. I am not good at doing that myself, and so I could use all the help that I can get. So always remember, right? We're not promised tomorrow. So be intentional, stay present. And also, if you're interested in getting merch like this with the new logo, I have a store. You can find that at store.noble-father.com, and that'll greatly go to support this cause, helping fathers. And it helps me with, taking care of my family, which is very important. This is something that I do full time, and it has not been an easy journey. The resistance and the journey itself is not something that I wish even on my worst enemies. But I am glad to be doing it, and God has given me that anointing. And I want to, speak a blessing over you, the listener, wherever you're at, whatever you're going through. Just realize you're not going through it alone. And if you're a father who needs support and you want space to grow with other fathers, right? The selfless contributing kinds selfless that I was talking about, feel free to join us, right? We do our weekly meetings. We have a Bible study as well. And man, we're all about growing fathers. And so surround yourself with good people who are wanting to grow, won't co-sign your bullshit. Please reach out to me if you'd like that. I'd love to connect you to our community. Thank you for joining me. And until next week, bye for now.